So, for those of you who were here yesterday, you know that we are working on our state chapter program. The state chapter program is a way for us to help local groups and individuals in the states who want to lobby on behalf of the issues they care about. We want to provide you guys with resources and support so that you can do so more effectively. And part of the way we're doing this is through our state chapter program. We are pleased that the Pennsylvania is going to be our third official state chapter. And we're going to celebrate that moment by signing a fancy piece of paper with a fancy pin in front of all of you people. So I would like to bring up Brian Fields and Justin Vacula, who are going to be the first two co-chairs of our state chapter. So we can sign our memo of understanding. And also to let you know that if you would like to get involved with this, our next call to discuss this will be on Tuesday, the 2nd at 2 p.m. You can find out the phone number on our website. And please do get involved, and let's make Pennsylvania the third official state chapter.
And you want to make sure it's clear if you have a couple.
By the way, I would like to point out that the pen we are using to sign this is from the Richard Dawkins Foundation. Just for anybody who wants to be amused by that little piece of trivia. While we're finishing dealing with the papers, our next speaker is Justin Vacula. Justin is a blogger and a podcaster, and has been involved with the NEPA Free Thought Society and so many other activist causes and things that you know, it's just hard to name them all. And I have to say for myself, I'm really proud to be working with him, with the Secular Coalition for America. And so please give a warm welcome, Justin Vacula.
Test. Okay, that's good. So I've been invited to speak at this conference today. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to move forward and work with the Secular Coalition for America for real change here in Pennsylvania. We're mobilizing here as a community, as a conference, and it's a really great thing. Instead of just talking about the issues, we're planning on acting, being on the ground, and many people can support that. Whether you are an activist, whether you're a blogger, everyone can contribute in his or her own way. So normally I would speak on topics dealing with arguments against religious belief, talking about the validity of arguments, talking about morality, but today I'm going to make it specific to the state of Pennsylvania. People often tell me something along the lines of, well, atheists really don't have a problem here. Secularists don't have a problem. It's just really these extreme fundamentalists out there in different states. In Pennsylvania, just really isn't a big deal. But I think many people overlook many things. So I'm going to read an essay I have here, and we'll move on to question and answer session. Personally, I've been involved pretty intimately in various church-state violations, or very close to that, where government and religion would very much overlap in some cases. As a resident of Pennsylvania, it is quite apparent to me that the continual intersection between religion and government interferes with democracy and threatens the Establishment Clause. While religious belief injected into the workings of democracy in Pennsylvania is harmful, it seems especially harmful in an election year when pious politicians pander to religious constituents, while lawmakers who might otherwise dissent in cases of governmental wrongs are afraid to do so. Considering at least 4 recent establishment issues in Pennsylvania, legislation declaring 2012 to be the year of the Bible, sectarian governmental prayer, coercion of citizens who dare to remain seated for governmental prayer, and intentions to fund religious schools with taxpayer monies, should convince Pennsylvanians to realize that they need separation of religion and government. Pennsylvania lawmakers have recently seemed to neglect Section 3 of Pennsylvania's state constitution, which states that all men have a natural and indefeasible right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own consciences. And no human authority can, in any case whatever, control or interfere with the rights of conscience, and no preference shall be given to any law, to any religious establishments or modes of worship. A guideline such as this, if followed, would preserve a separation of church and state in Pennsylvania, but it has been ignored. One particular piece of legislation that seems to be a clear example of religious pandering is the unanimously affirmed House Resolution number 535, which has been called a non-controversial resolution, which declared 2012 to be the year of the Bible in Pennsylvania. Not only did the resolution inform Pennsylvanians of a, quote, national need to study and apply the teachings, unquote, of the Bible, it also included language of, when referring to the Bible, Holy Scriptures, the Word of God, and also noted that, quote, renewing our knowledge of and faith in God through Holy Scripture can strengthen us as a nation and a people. The dictates of consciences mentioned in Pennsylvania's Constitution seem to be trampled upon because this resolution takes sides on theological issues and recommends actions, religious in nature, which Pennsylvania should undertake, obviously excluding people of non-Christian religions, non-religious Pennsylvanians, and many more. Another obvious example of religion and government being a dangerous mix is the constant stream of unconstitutional, sectarian governmental prayer during House of Representatives sessions here in Pennsylvania. While some governmental prayers may be considered non-denominational, even though they seem to reference Judeo-Christian beliefs, many contain specific references to Christianity. Jesus Christ dying on a cross to save people from sin, Jesus Christ is a Lord and Savior, the Apostle Paul, God in heaven, the maker of heaven and earth. All these phrases are frequently expressed during governmental sessions in the House of Representatives. Unconstitutional prayers also exist in a background of coercion directed towards citizens who dare to remain seated during prayer. Individuals, before entering the guest chambers at the House of Representatives, which many of you may have visited this morning, view a prominent sign which encourages people to stand for prayer. And before the prayer, the House Speaker personally asks people to stand. On one occasion in which I had attended a House session, after being aware of requests to stand, I remained silently seated while taking notes in a tablet, along with Carl Silverman in the front row. An armed security officer approached me and repeatedly asked me to stand to show respect. 2 requests from the House Speaker and a sign apparently were not enough. Another foray of Pennsylvania lawmakers concerned a school voucher program in which public monies, instead of going to public schools, which must provide for children in Pennsylvania, regardless of religious upbringing, religious belief of their parents, or religious persuasion, would fund private religious institutions, which exist mainly with the primary intention to indoctrinate impressionable minds, compel students to participate in school-led prayer with no opt-out, and teach younger creationist religious doctrine instead of sound science. The school voucher system, if passed, would have been an affront to the state constitution because lawmakers would have given preference to religious establishments, many of which would have been Christian institutions, and compel people to fund religious worship against their natural and indefeasible rights as mentioned in the state constitution. And the school voucher did not pass, thankfully. When I had peacefully protested a rally, holding a sign which called for separation of church and state, pious politicians assembled. They urged lawmakers to vote in favor of a school voucher program. I was told by one of the speakers, State Senator Anthony Williams, that I should go back to my community of privilege and send my children to whichever school I wanted to, whether they be atheist schools or not. State Senator Williams, talking at me from his podium, became quite angry at me and said, "By the way, this is my rally, not yours. These are our dollars, not just yours. These are our children, not yours. These are our school systems, not yours. And by the way, this has nothing to do with the separation of church and state." In the case of the school voucher rally and the coercion I faced as a result of my remaining seated for governmental prayer, I was made to feel like a political outsider. A climate of divisiveness, pitting citizens against lawmakers acting in pious unconstitutional manners, was created, in which I, a citizen of Pennsylvania, while peacefully objecting to that which I saw as unconstitutional, was poorly treated. If lawmakers were to remain neutral on matters of religion while acting in their capacities to serve all citizens, there would have been no divisiveness. Legislation declaring 2012 to be the year of the Bible, unconstitutional governmental prayer, the coercion of citizens who remain seated for governmental prayer, and school voucher programs aiming to fund religion create a compelling case for many freethinkers, many secularists, many humanists, many atheists, many Pastafarians, whatever you happen to call yourself, and even religious individuals, to be concerned with matters of church-state separation. Establishment Clause violations are always a problem, but they are especially grievous in election years because pandering pious politicians attempt to gain votes while lawmakers who otherwise would object to Establishment Clause violations may not because they fear losing the support of their constituents. And this is only the tip of the iceberg of issues in Pennsylvania. These are issues at the governmental level and the political level. mostly in the capital here in Harrisburg. And that's not to mention local violations, with school boards leading with prayer, often invoking Jesus, the Father, and similar things. Or in my backyard in northeastern Pennsylvania, religious displays on courthouse lawns. We see these violations everywhere. People say, well, we've always done it this way. No one has ever objected. Well, what I'd like people to do is start to change that tradition. Start to object. If you don't want to go out there and put your name on the line, contact someone else. Contact various organizations. Contact someone you might know who'd want to do it. Unfortunately, it's a very dangerous climate. For me, earlier this year, simply wanting to put a bus ad that had the word atheist on it, that didn't fly. It was called an attack on religion. It was called controversial. So simply for existing, were slammed by many people. Some of them government officials, and one of them the solicitor of the county of Vacula transit system, claiming that the word atheist is an attack on religion. One only wonders if Christianity is an attack on atheism. I'm not really sure about that. But there's still time for clarification on that one. So it can feel really difficult sometimes looking at these violations, looking at the climate, but there has been a great deal of change. Many people have been willing to speak out. Many people have succeeded. Some of them, even students like myself. It's very difficult, but I think it's a battle worth fighting. And when the hate mail comes in from pious politicians, religious individuals, whomever, even fellow non-theists, I simply laugh at some points. Maybe not all can deal with it, but I look at it saying, well, hey, there really is a problem out there. It's not just those evangelicals. It's many people who are the so-called moderates. But it's also nice throughout the years that many religious individuals have approached me agreeing with issues of church-state separation. They say, well, I disagree with you on the God issue, but I agree with you on church-state separation. And that's wonderful to hear. It's a really good thing. People realize that religion and government is a really bad idea, and it can often cheapen religion in some cases, I think. So those are my thoughts. I'm going to give the rest of the time for question and answers. Thank you.
Once again, anybody who has any questions, please step up to the mic. Thank you.
Justin, you're really not afraid to be the center of conflict or cause people to stop and think, or how do you feel about conflict? I mean, you're creating people who are really coming at you, and how do you feel about that? Because it can be difficult for some of us to deal with conflict. Does it affect you, and how?
Right. So earlier I said that not all people can deal with conflict. They're not equipped to put their name out there. They're not equipped to necessarily go and protest events or file the complaints. So I think there are many ways that people can contribute. So over here, Jason Vacula at this table over here, he's the media producer of the NEPA Free Thought Society podcast. And initially, he didn't want to put his name out there. He didn't want to go public. So he worked behind the scenes. He worked and did what I can't do. I don't know the technical stuff. I don't know the media stuff. I bring the content to the podcast. And he works behind the scenes. And it's been quite successful. Many people in local groups can also contribute. If you know those activists who are out there, give the information to them. I'm sure there'll be people who can deal with it. So on the note of conflict and addressing it, I think it's very important to realize what you're getting into. If you know you are a person who cannot handle conflict and that there will be backlash to what you write, then perhaps it can be best to write under an anonymous name. Perhaps it can be best to not write at all. Perhaps it can be better to contribute in a different way. many people in the secular community are interested in maybe creating music, creating entertainment, maybe photography. Maybe you're just a teacher out there and you see your activism as simply teaching the students and inspiring students. So I think that all people can have roles in this community. You need not to be the firebrand out there. You don't need to even be going to events, although I would highly recommend that, of course. There can be many different roles that people can play. So my advice is, if you can't handle conflict, you're not good at conflict, it can be a good idea to think of alternate ways to contribute.
As a further comment on that, I go to a lot of meetings. I go to a protest sometimes. I've even been quoted in newspaper articles on occasion. For personal reasons that don't have anything to do with myself personally, I always remain anonymous. But I've found that there are a lot of people that are involved in these things that are more than willing to have their name out. So even though my name's out there, even though I'm at, I was at a protest for Linda Thompson that she referred to on her speech the other day, you're still a body, you're helping them, you're giving more volume to the people that are willing to speak up and have their name forth, because if they were all by themselves, they wouldn't draw attention at all. So just by simply being there, I help to encourage that sort of being able to get the information out to the people, even though my name's not attached to it. So just a comment, that's all that was.
Yeah, and that's okay. Some people are looking for different things in the movement or the community, whether it just be fellowship, fun, the activism, the blasphemy, the writing, whatever happens to be the case. So if you're not necessarily looking for fame attached to your real name, then being anonymous might work for you. That's a good suggestion for the follow-up. I think that's a great way to go about things.
Let me act as devil's advocate for a minute.
Sure. Angel's advocate over there.
You know that Senator Anthony Williams represents a very poor area in inner city Philadelphia, and his concern is for the education of the children in his district. There may not be any, or many, but probably not any, truly secular private options for those children. What would you tell a parent whose child is in these schools, which are awful? Okay, I mean, I have a daughter who did student teaching at Pittsburgh Public Schools, and if they're anything like Philadelphia, and they're probably better in Philadelphia, I would assume, but they're very bad. The teachers just yell at the kids all the time. Learning doesn't get accomplished. What would you tell a parent whose only choice is send their kid to the public school, which is dangerous and failing, or get some money to go from, they pay some, well, maybe part of the 47% that technically doesn't pay taxes, but they're basically taxpayers, and they spend money, and their only option would be, say, a Catholic school, which may be doing better and probably less violent than the current school. What would you tell that parent?
The issue of education is a really complex one. It's one that's actually been brought up just on the panel here and throughout the conference. And it seems that there's kind of a feedback loop in some of these communities where the communities really don't have many opportunities for advancement. The adults are having children, the adults aren't necessarily providing for the children that much, and maybe these adults are teaching the schools. Maybe the good teachers aren't in there. So when people see poor advancement in the community, it would likely overlap to the school. So how to improve the schools, that's a pretty difficult question. We talk about No Child Left Behind, that hasn't seemed to work. So we're trying to figure out what works here. But the problem is with these private religious schools, some of them can actively discriminate against students and not allow them to be part of the educational process. So if a child has some sort of learning disability, intellectual disability, they can just say, hey, we don't want you, or hey, we're not going to provide the special recommendations for your children. So both of the options just might be really terrible. And another thing with the school vouchers is that there's often no opt-out clause where the children have to attend prayer sessions or prayer is mandated as part of the instruction. And what is the student going to leave the room or something? It seems really bizarre, especially in the elementary school grades when the children have to be under constant supervision, and even in high school in many cases. And I actually went to King's College, which is a Catholic college in Wilkes-Barre, and I thought that college was great. But what about the elementary schools or the high schools? Maybe that's not so much the case. It's a very tough issue.
How you doing? First, I'd like to thank you for being one of the people on the front lines. It's appreciated that all of us can do that. I'm actually a Scranton resident. I remember about the time of the Colts bus ad, the Atheist bus ad, you were pretty viciously attacked on local radio. Do you feel like you were still able to get your message out? And do you feel like there's any type of improvement in the type of reaction by the media and the public?
Thank you, thank you. Hopefully you can get involved with the NEPA Free Thought Society.
Definitely will.
Great. So the atheist bus ad issue I was involved in, I had brought that up briefly. What happened with that, there is this backlash against secular billboards all throughout the United States. Billboards that say good without God or don't believe in God, join the club, often get vandalized. And some religious individuals say that they are offensive or attacking. It even got to the point where the response to one of these ads was a Christian stalker bus, which was hired to follow a public transportation bus somewhere in the United States. It was really bizarre. It said, God still loves you, and the response was very lackluster. So Richard Wade, writing for the Friendly Atheist blog, had proposed something along the lines of, maybe we should put up billboards that say, puppies are cute, and put the atheist organization on it. So with the suggestion of Carl Silverman here, we collaborated together, and the final decision was for me to propose a billboard that simply had the word atheist on it, with a period after that. The bus ad was proposed, and it was rejected. So this made national news twice. First was the rejection, second was the, hey, we're still rejecting it, and now we're calling it an attack on religion. So some people might be upset about that, and that's pretty awkward, because the point of this ad was to be the most inoffensive ad possible. That was the slated intention, but apparently it still caused controversy. So what does that mean? What does that mean for secular individuals? Should we reach out and go full force and attack people? And well, that's not my approach. I tend to be more diplomatic, and I tend to attack ideas, not people. That's my preferred method. Maybe it's not others, but I recently landed a speaking engagement at an evangelical Christian college, so I guess something worked. I don't know. So I want to continue going forth with my style. If other people have their styles, they can be productive, they can reach out to certain people. I think the bus ad was a really good thing because the rejection of the bus ad got much, much, much more coverage than if they were to just accept the bus ad and take our $1,000. So we got some pretty good advertisement. These bus ads and billboards can often be really, really good, and they can be a gift that keeps on giving, depending on the message you have on the billboard. So local radio, well, there's one local radio personality, WILK News Radio, Steve Corbett, who called me a professional atheist and insensitive. So, I'm going to continue what I'm doing. I'm going to continue saying what I'm saying. I hope that I have a diplomatic tone. That usually is the case. So I say keep going ahead with the advertisements.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.